Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final edition of This Week at CFSA for 2020. My name is Nick Wood. I'm the Policy Director here at CFSA. Really pleased to be joined today by Wes King, the Senior Policy Analyst for the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, who I've had the privilege to work with very closely, as all of us within the Carolinas and around the country organized to try and do what people need during this crisis. And so I want to, before we get started, talking about updates from Washington and COVID and next year, I want to give Wes a chance to introduce himself and say a few words about the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, of which CFSA and many others are members across the country.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and thanks for having me, and thanks for all the work that CFSA does all across the Carolinas. For those of you who don't know about NSAC, or the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, we are an alliance of grassroots organizations, about 130 grassroots organizations from all around the country that works together to advance reforms to federal policy to support sustainability, food systems, natural resources in rural communities. And that 130 members includes Carolina Farm Stewards Association. So really great to be able to work with Nick through the coalition, but also just to be able to be part of all the great work you guys are doing in the Carolinas, and being able to take the lessons you learn and translate those up to us here in Washington, D.C., so that we really be kind of your eyes, your ears, and your voice in D.C.
Absolutely. And I can't say how many times I've texted or called or emailed Wes to find out the latest changing information so that we can do the best we can for our members here in the Carolinas and contribute to this national effort. So let's jump right in. Wes, what's happening up in Washington with COVID-19 relief? We're seeing everything every day.
Oh, boy. The last 2 weeks have been symbolic of what this whole year has been. I think a roller coaster ride when it comes to what's happening. So right now in Washington, D.C., it appears that members of Congress, leaders, are on the verge of finally delivering a package of COVID relief programs and provisions and funding. Hopefully, it appears we are on the verge of it. It's been one of those, like I said, it's been a roller coaster. I think a lot of people thought we were going to get a some sort of package early this week. There was some noise, some hope. There's been a bipartisan group of legislators that I think really have been bucking leadership and sort of kind of broke through the logjam that has created this opportunity that now it's like leaders, Leader McConnell, Leader Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, Leader McCarthy are all finally working on a package. However, there just continues to be a lot of uncertainty. One of the things that Congress is trying to deal with at the same time, the last legislation to kind of kick the can down the road to fund the government, to prevent a government shutdown, expires tonight at midnight. So Congress is not only pushing up against this deadline to get COVID relief done for people who really, truly are desperately in need of assistance. At the same time, we've got a deadline to fund the government. And if things don't come together today, we're going to see a government shutdown over the weekend. And in fact, a lot of people in D.C. are starting to say, we're going to have a government shutdown over the weekend. It's going to be short. It's not going to be a full shutdown. But they have not gotten agreements yet on what needs to happen just quite yet. And they're going to need the weekend to finalize this government funding and hopefully a COVID relief.
Yeah, and thank you, Wes. I think this is grave news for all of us throughout the country. We know that the lines at food banks are sometimes miles long. I learned yesterday that people are showing up 24, 36 hours ahead of time just to get in line for a box of food. And So tell us, with the caveat that we don't know much and things change all the time, should a package pass, what do you foresee in terms of agriculture and issues that are important to sustainable agriculture folks?
Yeah. The first big one that I think it's more about food systems, and it's more about where, neighbors meet neighbors and communities, and that's SNAP. It's actually one of the holdups right now.
Could you spell out the acronym for us?
Yeah. SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. So this has been a big sticking point throughout the year, and that bipartisan group I mentioned earlier came out in favor of increasing SNAP benefits, recognizing what's the easiest way to get food into people's hands who need it. It's putting more money on SNAP cards. So there's a lot of movement to increase food stamps, SNAP, but at the late hour, there's been some Freedom Caucus-oriented individuals in the House that have been objecting and pulling, kind of slowing that down. But that's sort of one of the big things. There's other things that are quite big and important for agriculture that's worth mentioning, that we think, or we're quite hopeful there's going to be some permutation of it ending up in the final COVID package. And that first one is a big pot of money, about $9 billion for the USDA to run a new round of COVID response aid. And that
would this be under CFAP, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Project, or do we know?
It could be. It's written in a way to be broad, but I think it's with the intention that it would be money so that the USDA could do another round of potential CFAP direct payments, as well as another round of something like the Farmers to Families Food Box program that was rolled out earlier this year. One of the great things about it, too, is it looks like there's going to be a lot more inclusion this time around. Some of the language we've seen actually spells out contract, Contract. Yeah. As well as a whole number of sectors of agriculture that were left out of previous CFAP programs. So that's really positive. And then the other thing we think is going to be included in there is a number of significant investments in some existing local and regional food systems programs that have really helped organizations all across the country build local food systems. Tongue twister of the day is contract. Somebody posted in the comments. Yeah, I said it there, no problem. But we're hopeful that there's going to be, significant investments in the local agriculture market program, as well as significant investments in a program called GusNIP, which provides incentives to match SNAP dollars at farmers markets and local groceries for locally produced food. So there's a lot of potential really good stuff in what's being negotiated and working its way through Congress right now. It's just a question of, what ends up in the final bill, and you never know what's happening behind scenes, who's trying to claw back this and move this to that. But right now I'm cautiously optimistic that this time next year, we're going to be saying finally, for Christmas, for the holidays, Congress delivered on the kind of aid that families, communities, and farmers have been asking for and need.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. And I think a few things to know. One is SNAP and online SNAP. For a lot of folks in CFSA's world, know we and many allies across North Carolina and South Carolina said we need to support a SNAP increase. And we also need online SNAP, which would dramatically increase the ability of local food businesses and farms to serve people with SNAP and do it in a way that reflects the public health needs of the current era and supports our most vulnerable residents here in the United States. And so also, as you said, more direct aid, whether it's under the CFAP program or something else, again, just like everyone else, just like the online SNAP, we were very involved with NSAC, and Congresswoman Alma Adams from North Carolina was our champion for the Local Farmer Act that would put more direct aid, that would have made sure that there was a revenue-based approach, like we saw an adjustment in CFAP 2 that assured that racial equity and outreach and technical assistance would be done, and also would help support these modifications. And so my next question to Wes, and just want to note that we got a lot to talk about, but what do we need? We know that something we hope is going to happen here, but we also know it's not going to be enough given the devastation that our country is facing. So what else do we need?
Yeah. I think you hit it there. The two things that I see that are still needed that aren't under current consideration in terms of the COVID package that is hopefully going to pass over the weekend would be that SNAP online piece, but also some of those targetings, some of the set-asides, some of the language within the Local Farmers Act that Representative Adams has put forward that are about directing resources to those communities, particularly farmers of color, indigenous farmers who have historically been pretty much left out of USDA programs, not to mention all the historical legacies of racism and persecution that has occurred in this country. So those are two things that I think are still going to be left that need to get done. I'm hopeful there's going to be opportunities next year. That's one of the things that there's been a lot of talk about, that this COVID package is not going to be the last, which is great to hear. And I think going back to that Local Farmers Act, one of the things that's really important about those set-asides within the program, or the targeting that bill represents, focused on BIPOC communities, but also beginning farmers and those underserved, is one of the statistics we recently learned was that about half of beginning farmers, half of traditionally underserved or socially disadvantaged producers haven't even heard about CFAP 2.0. So there's a lot of people who really need assistance who have not even heard or know that there is some assistance available right now, which I think speaks to the need for a USDA that is going to prioritize outreach to some of these harder to reach communities that don't have a track record of working with the USDA. And some of that's understandable, considering, particularly if you look at farmers of color throughout the South who, have just had a long history of discrimination at the Farm Service Agency that they've had to deal with. I'm not surprised, but I think that's one of the things we need to get done next year. Is we need to expand upon what's there and really have some more prioritized and targeted outreach for BIPOC producers.
Yeah, absolutely. And as folks a couple weeks ago saw with Kamal Bell from Sankofa Farms, there's also the Justice for Black Farmers Act that I think it's still the official bill needs to be introduced, but Senator Cory Booker has really led the way, and Senator Gillibrand out of New York and Senator Warren out of Massachusetts are also supporting. So that's something else to look forward to. So we are again running towards the end, but I want to turn it over to Wes to tell us. Let's look big picture at next year. We've got a new Congress. We've got a new USDA that's on the way. We've got a new presidential administration, and there's a lot happening. So just give us a snapshot, and of course, the policy team here at CFSA will keep you all informed, and working with NSAC will give you the latest, such that there is.
Yeah. So next year, like you said, we've got a new Congress. We've got a new administration. Not only do we have a new Congress, when it comes to the House and Senate Agriculture Committees, which are the places that we focus on the most, because that's where food and agriculture policy discussions take place. A lot of new leadership Expect a lot of new members. Longtime ranking member for Republicans in the House, Mike Conaway from Texas. He's retired. He's gone. Colin Peterson, the Democratic chair of the House Ag Committee, longtime member, he lost re-election. So he's gone. So we're going to have a complete new leadership at the House Agriculture Committee. On the Senate side, Senator Roberts, who's been the chair of the Ag Committee, the Senate Ag Committee for many years, he also retired. We're going to have a new chair of the Ag Committee as well in the Senate. So a lot of questions as to what these new ag committees are going to look like. On the House, are we going to see more progressive policy? The incoming chairman, David Scott from Georgia, not viewed as necessarily a super progressive guy, but the outgoing member, Colin Peterson, was quite conservative. So are we going to see new priorities? Are we going to see a new focus in the committees? Big question. And then one of the big questions I think a lot of us are looking to in terms of what is the focus of the ag committees going to be next year is climate change. I think everybody realizes that, COVID is not the only crisis that farmers and communities are dealing with across this country. There's a climate change crisis that we're also dealing with and have been dealing with. So that's one of the big things that I think is going to be, in addition to COVID response, climate change. I think we're going to see a lot of discussions both at the USDA with the new administration as well as in Congress about what do we do about climate change? How do we start bending things back towards a more hospitable climate and trying to address what could be a long-term catastrophe for the globe?
Yeah, and I want to a couple exciting things that happened this year because when people who are directly impacted by issues, and we know that farmers know about this, are impacted by this, and have solutions to this. And there's a bill called the Agricultural Resilience Act that was introduced in the House by Representative Shelley Pingree out of Maine, the only organic farmer in the House of Representatives. And it includes a whole lot of incentives for the practices that our members are already doing and would do more of if there was support for it, and a pathway to zero greenhouse gases by 2040, because we know that farmers can help mitigate this as well, which is incredibly powerful. And the farmer letter that many of y'all are familiar with, over 2,000 farmers, CFSA was a part of it, and it came out of NSAC's work. And hundreds of folks in the Carolinas, I think North Carolina came in second after California, show that this is a big concern to them. So I want to thank Wes and give him a quick sec to say anything final, and then I will take us home on our last This Week at CFSA of 2020.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that ARA, the Agricultural Resilience Act that you mentioned, Shelley Pingree introduced, we're working with her right now on updates to that, and we're expecting to see a new iteration of that introduced early next year. And it's going to be really important for everybody in the Carolinas to continue to work together to support that legislation, because there's other proposals that are starting to get out there. Some of them that would like to turn over a lot of this to the private market corporations, but with really lacking in the kind of conflict of interests and oversight that we really need to make sure serious, real climate change efforts are taking place on farms, and to make sure that farmers who've really been at the forefront of this and leading the charge get the kind of support they need. So there's competing proposals out there that I think are not gonna be as good as Shelley Pingree's. And so I just, flag that for the listeners and flag that for everybody at CFSA, that we're going to continue to need your help to make sure that serious, real, comprehensive, progressive climate change policy for agriculture becomes a reality next year.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wes. And so keep an eye out, folks. We'll be looking to ask our congressional delegation to sign on and co-sponsor this incredible bill, because we all have a lot at stake. So I do want to thank Wes. I want to thank all of you for joining us again as the work continues to create a thriving, healthy world amidst very difficult circumstances. And as folks know, I started in February, and it's been quite an education. And I have to say, being able to work with INSAC, being able to work with CFSA, being able to work with RAFI USA and the food banks and so many others has been quite incredible. And I think the struggle and crisis can help bring us together and show new ways, to show holistic ways that we can keep people going now through equitable and appropriate COVID relief. That we're very capable of pushing forward in 2021, and a real opportunity looking towards the 2023 Farm Bill to implement a lot of these permanently and in even greater force. And so I have a firm belief as we go into the holidays and we look to leave 2020 behind, the 2021 will be brighter. It will create opportunities and the ability of ourselves to continue to come together in the Carolinas and around the country to tackle some of the most serious problems facing our community, whether it's the ability to eat food or the ability to have a place to live going forward for our children today that have so much. So the harms that are happening they go by a matter of degree, but the solutions also do, and we can make a big difference. So with that, thank you. Thanks to Wes, thanks to INSAC, thanks to all of our wonderful guests throughout the year. And it will continue, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate, form coalitions, and build power in 2021 and help build the world that we need and that we should have. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.